It's noon here in Ventnor City, New Jersey, and Bethesda, Maryland, and this is news that you can use from CarEdge for Thursday, February 9th, with your hosts, Zach and Ray. And who's making a huge mistake today, buddy?
Lots of folks are making lots of
Yeah.
mistakes, Dad, and we're going to cover them in depth here. Don't you worry. We have the latest inventory data from last month for some automakers like Ford, Toyota, and Honda. We're going to dig into that. We also have a few other stories that are quite interesting. Credit availability, it appears to be tightening. And Dad, EV drivers, man, we're going to have to spend some time talking about EV drivers because they're just getting the rough end of the deal. But before we do, Dad, a little personal news.
Yeah.
Your Phoenix Suns, my Phoenix Suns, they trade for Kevin Durant. So we just got to.
Yes. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is a great day to be a Phoenix Suns fan. It's been a good time to be a Phoenix Suns fan for the past 2.5 years. But today is a great day. It's also a sad day because in order to land Kevin Durant, we had to say goodbye to a budding future superstar in the NBA, Mikal Bridges. And I've had the opportunity to watch his development for the last 5 years, and he don't be surprised if at some point the Suns regret ever having traded him. But we also had to give up Cam Johnson, and those two were known as the Twins, and we're going to miss them. They brought us a lot of thrills and a lot of chills over the years. But my goodness, Kevin Durant, Zach, Kevin
there it is.
Durant.
All right. You saw the wrap-up signal. Here we go, guys. Let's jump in. All right, Dad. Here is the latest inventory data. Can you see that? I don't think you quite can. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to compare January inventory to, you can see here it says February, but the inventory levels from January to the inventory levels in December, because we've started to see, Dad, some price strengthening in the used car market and potentially even in the new car market as well. And could it be that automakers such as Ford, Toyota, Honda, and others are maybe intentionally restricting some of the inventory that they're putting into the market to keep prices inflated? I don't know. Let's look at the data and see. So, Pops, before we do, when we're looking at this information, we have inventory units and we have days supply. Can you remind us what days supply is?
Day supply is the number of days it would take to sell the existing inventory on a daily. So if there's a 92-day supply and you didn't get any more cars, it would take you 92 days to get rid of those 13,200 Mustangs, allegedly speaking.
Exactly. So let's run through it, Dad. Let's see which vehicles have more days supply and less days supply. And as days supply goes down, negotiability of a vehicle also decreases. The two are definitely correlated. So for example, Dad, we've got Ford cars. They don't have many, but that's just because it's the Mustang. The days supply went down. Not going to spend too much time there. Let's look at the F-Series pickup truck, Dad. We actually have a small increase in days supply up to 67. 152,800 of them in dealer inventory. Now, this is where things can maybe be a little misleading, but also interesting. I'm going to share last month's data. Do you see last month's data on the screen now, Dad? There were actually 172,900 F-Series pickup trucks in inventory. So now we have fewer in inventory, but days supply went up.
How can that be? How does that correlate other than sales are slowing down? Would that be the only reason that could correlate?
Exactly. And this is why it ties back to the title of today's show. The huge mistake would be acknowledging that, we've had strong sales. Pricing strength can stay there. No. Fortunately, we're seeing this. The amount of vehicles in inventory went down 20,000 month over month for the F-Series, but the days supply went up by 5. And it's exactly for what you just said, Dad. That means fewer people are choosing to pay those prices, and that's exactly what we need to see.
Well, yeah, and I think we also see it in some of the other brands as well. I'm assuming, because we know for a fact that in January new car sales were up, but it was the fleet side of new car sales that pushed overall new car sales up for the month of January. Retail sales to retail customers dropped in January. So once the fleet purchasers, Hertz, Budget, Avis, Enterprise, your government fleets, your large corporation fleets, once they get their hands on the cars that they need, guess what's happening? If there's less people actually in the market for retail purposes, well, yeah, your inventory, your day supply is going to grow because you're going to run out of fleet buyers. They place big orders, they get their vehicles, then they're done for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. There can be or will be an increase in day supply for most of the brands.
Yeah, I completely agree. But let's keep digging in to the numbers, Pops. We've got Acura here. Days supply of Acura went up from 42 to 48. I'm not going to flip the screen, but let me check for last month. Last month, Dad, Acura had 16,300 vehicles in inventory. Now they have 19,200. So that makes sense why their days supply is going up. I'm going to jump up to the top. Let's go here to Honda. Where are you, Honda? Total Honda days supply went down from 29 to 26. They have had 91,600 vehicles in inventory. Again, not going to flip the screen, but I can tell you, Dad, last month, Honda had 101,000 vehicles in inventory. So we see the inventory shortages at Honda continuing to plague them there. Let's look at Hyundai Kia, Dad. 77,700 vehicles in inventory, a 17-day supply, up significantly from the 13-day supply a month before. Interestingly, the prior month they had 66,600 vehicles in inventory, so they like having like numbers in their inventory stats. And then Mazda, Dad, from a 24-day supply up to a 28-day supply. They had 24,000 vehicles previously in inventory. What about our friends over at Subaru? Could they even be bucking the inventory shortage trend? An 8-day supply to an 11-day supply, nearly 20,000 Subarus in inventory, up from 16,000 the month before. And then let's hit on Toyota here, Dad. Toyota, from an 18-day supply to a 24-day supply, 132,000 of them in inventory, up from 120,000 the month before. So read on the room, Dad. You think automakers? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, last night I got a call from our friend Chip, and
how's he
their
doing?
group, he's doing well. And in their group, they have a Toyota store. Now, even though Toyota's increase in inventory, on-hand inventory, shows that it's gone up, he's telling me they have very little in the way of new vehicle inventory, and that their allocation was actually cut to a certain degree because of the continued inventory shortages. And with that, he has seen at the sales, at the auctions, that he called me because he said, Ray, it's like going through right after COVID again. He said, prices are shooting up at the sale. He said, it's just crazy numbers what some of this stuff's bringing. He says, some of what he was buying 3 or 4 weeks ago is up $3,000 now. And he doesn't, he says, I don't know how, he says, the one thing he said that I see happening at their dealerships is, it used to be that the new car departments didn't make money and the used car departments did. Now everybody's starting to overpay for cars again, and they're not necessarily expecting to make a lot of money on them. And so rather than new car departments not making money, they're expecting that the used car department's not going to make money, but the new car department, because of shortages, is going to carry them. It's 180 degrees from where it was.
Should we be telling people, Dad, that like right now is the best time to sell your car? Because that's kind of what it seems like. If wholesale values are skyrocketing by thousands of dollars at the sale, and now Chip has told us, we've seen CDG, we've seen Brandon, we've got folks in our community telling us this. Now is probably the time, because this I I tweeted about it today, Dad. I think this is a dead cat bounce. Like, I do not understand when things like this happen and you don't understand why they're happening. That, to me, that's a red
Yes.
flag. I just don't have
Yes.
access to the right information, which I don't think is the issue here. We have a pulse on the information better than I think most people would. I think it's a dead cat bounce. Like, someone should take advantage of this. If you have a car to sell it this month, because evidently people just want to pay crazy prices. I don't quite understand. I don't get it.
Well, he's saying that there's just a shortage of cars, of decent cars being brought to the sale.
That I believe.
And yeah, and the fact that there's no lease returns that are making it to the sales is exacerbating the situation. But the idea at their group is, hey, we're going to overpay for used cars so we can have used cars to sell. We don't expect to necessarily have those cars to be profitable. We hope that the finance department can make up for the fact that we're not going to be making a lot of front end profit on the used cars. But we also realize that with interest rates rising, that it'll be harder and harder for the F&I departments to rake in the type of income that they had been raking in before. So it's going to be harder for the F&I departments to mitigate the loss of profit on the front end of used cars. It's a rather unusual situation. It goes against historic norms. So is it a cat bounce? It could be. I mean, it's why is it happening when you would think to yourself the opposite should be happening? And just to relate that, if I could, as somebody said, I saw in the comments, well, Carvana stock has tripled since it was okay. Why? But my point is, there's what are we not seeing? Well, on February 24th, we're going to see, because we're going to get their fourth quarter earning reports, and all those poor folks, I'm thinking they're going to be shocked when it goes back down lower than where it had been. So I don't know. I'd like to believe this is a blip of some kind. I could be wrong, but I'd like to believe it's a blip of some kind, because you can't sustain these prices with rising interest rates and have these vehicles be affordable for people out there. As this continues, the pool of people who can actually find themselves in the market for a car keeps getting smaller and smaller. It's we've gone from like an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and we're headed to like a kiddie pool.
We have a great video coming out on Saturday over on the CarEdge channel, and it explains, and we use examples, real life examples of how the affordability crisis is taking millions of people out of the market, and who knows, we can end up having egg on our face a few months from now. Maybe used car prices just keep going up, and if they do, obviously we'll report on that just as well. But we don't understand it, because you pair that with the fact that interest rates are rising, banks are tightening their credit availability. Like, there's no world where I can understand car prices appreciating again. I seriously don't.
Well, not as rapidly as they are, and to the degree that they are. Now, I know Igor is at the sale today, at one of the auctions today. I'd love to get a take from Igor as to what he's seeing there. But I'm telling you, Chip was like, I just don't get it. I mean, literally flabbergasted at some of the prices that dealers are paying, and it's the increase has been too dramatic over too short of period of time for anybody to really justify it. And I think part of it is they're expecting this big bounce in sales, from tax refunds, but tax refunds are not going to be as big this year as they have been in years past. So,
yeah, that's a storyline that I feel like we haven't done enough work on, because if you expect there to be this big tax season bounce, that only impacts a small portion of the market. sub $10,000 vehicles primarily, and also the amount of the refund is going to be significantly less. So it's just shouldn't have as big of an impact as it probably is. Let's go to the chat here, Pops. We got from Honey Springs Homestead. I like that, and a cute cat in the avatar. Hiyo. As a F-150 assembly employee, my work has canceled the past 2 days this week due to parts shortages.
Wow. That's
Thanks
not
for
good.
that report. That's not good. Jasmine says, are signs still pointing to used car prices dropping after tax season? I think that's primarily how I still feel. I don't, again, maybe what we need to do, Dad, I'll reach out to the Black Book team. Maybe we just got to get them on the show within the next couple weeks. Sometime before the end of the month, and then sometime in like April or May, we got to get the Black Book team on, because I think used car prices are going to go down this year. I think we're just kind of waiting for that to happen. Again, the Fed wants prices to go down, so they're doing everything in their power to. And last time I checked, the more you increase interest rates, the more that should negatively impact demand. So I'm going to say yes. I still think used car prices are going to go down this year.
Well, and demand is down. The amount of retail consumers is down. So, if sales are down, and maybe not to the degree that the Fed was hoping, but sales are definitely down on the retail side of things. I still think the whole thing hinges on affordability, and at the prices we've been seeing, and with interest rates going up, I don't know how vehicles remain affordable.
We've got an interesting comment here from Lincoln Maniac. My trade-in value dropped $3,000 in a month, but the prices of used cars I look at have not dropped $3,000. 100%. You are not going to see dealers significantly, and we've been talking about this for a long time. We actually have a video come out, I think sometime early next week, with Justice, who's actually here in the live chat, one of our CarEdge car coaches. He managed to get $15,000 off on a car he recently bought. Yes. That wasn't because the advertised price was $15,000 less. So we are seeing dealers be stubborn, considerably stubborn, and a lot of folks, who are not well versed in what are reasonable prices, have access to the information like Black Book and others. Like, they're not going to know what a realistic price is. They'll just, oh, okay, it is what it is. I didn't see my $3,000. You've got here from Igor Pops. Auction is split in two camps. One, buying everything because they think tax season sales will be strong, and the other camp don't buy anything because tax season is forecasted to be weak. Interesting.
So Igor, let me ask you this, if I can. What camp are you in? I'm just out of curiosity. I know what camp.
And what camp would you be in, Pops?
Well, I expect it to be weaker than what people are anticipating. Everything I have read indicates that tax refunds are going to be a lot less than they have been in the past. And I think people will be shocked and surprised when they do their taxes and they find out that the refund is a third of what it had been last year. So that being the case, that will impact their desire to go out and potentially buy a car. But everybody, not everybody, but a lot of the dealers in the first camp, they're just going by what's happened in the past, and they might not have necessarily looked too deeply into what to expect this year tax refund time. So that's why I think it's a blip. That's why I think the dealers that are overpaying right now are making a huge mistake, because 60 days from now or 90 days from now, when those cars that they paid way too much for are just sitting there because the consumers aren't coming into the showrooms to buy them because their refund was a fifth or a third of what it had been last year, these guys are suddenly going to find themselves in a position of having to take losses. And we know how dealers feel about that.
Yeah, we definitely know how dealers feel about that. All right, Dad, let's keep going through the chat here. We've got a couple more interesting stories, but I want to address this from Matthew. He says, been shopping for about 6 months now and have been watching you guys for about that long. Thank you, Matthew. I noticed that all used cars and trucks are like $5,000 or more overpriced. What do you think about that? And Pops, I just want to remind everyone that you can get access to the same information that dealers are using to help justify some of their pricing back at CarEdge.com. So, for example, the black book values here, and let's put one to the test really quickly. I'm going to go to buy.
Okay.
And let's look for a used vehicle. And let's do this 2022 Corolla. Let me grab the VIN. It's got 2,800 miles on it. And where am I located? Where do we think that zip code is? 73301? I don't know. Where the heck is that?
Not around here.
1 second. 733. I think that's Texas. Yeah, that's Texas.
Okay.
I guess I was doing some testing earlier. So now let me put Texas in. Get my trade-in values. Okay, everyone keep these numbers in mind. Realistic retail value, $24,925. Realistic trade-in value, $23,570. Great, up to $28,000. Let's go back to that vehicle. So $25,000 is the average retail price that Black Book says this vehicle is worth. So can we say it's $5,000 overpriced across the board? Probably not. Can we say it's maybe like 10% margin built into these things, especially if they've been sitting on it for so long?
It's about $3,000 overpriced.
Yeah, and let's look at the price history here, Dad. They've come down. I mean, look at this. Back in October, they wanted $35,000 freaking dollars for this thing. What the heck?
Wow.
New it sold for $25,000. That's wild.
And they're still trying to get $3,000 over what it sold for, is what the MSRP of the vehicle was. And truth be told, and we had this conversation with Brandon yesterday. If somebody comes in and they're buying a $20,000 car, what they're really buying, what they're paying $20,000 for today is really only worth $13,000, $14,000, maybe $15,000. But the market is still skewed. Even though in a lot of areas prices have come down, they're still way too high. It's just they're not as high as they had been. So as a consumer, you're in a slightly better position, but they're still way too high. And yeah. I don't know, having spoken to Chip, I don't know if we will ever get back to the point where you aren't grossly overpaying for any pre-owned car as a retail customer, or how long it might take before we get there.
Yeah, and we were having this conversation a bit yesterday, and I want to continue it because I think it happens this year. I think the moment it becomes more difficult for a dealership, whether they're franchise or independent, to start making payroll is the moment they start to liquidate assets. And I can't forget about all of the signs we've seen around delinquency rates. The floor plan expenses for dealers are going up. I think that we're the little pop that we're seeing here in wholesale prices is not a sustained event like it was 2 years ago or 18 months ago. Like, prices will come back down. So I actually do think if you're patient, you can even wait something like 3 or 4 months. I think prices will be continuing to go back down in ways that they had pre this pop that we're seeing right now. So could end up being years, though. The counter argument to that would be, well, Zach, there's fewer used cars in the market. And so if there's just fewer used cars in the market, then prices are going to continue to be high. But I think there's too many headwinds against the idea of used cars continuing to appreciate, especially the biggest one being interest rates going up. The more the Fed does that, just the less affordable these things are to anyone.
The big problem is that, all those new cars that weren't built for the last 2.5 years that could have been built, that could have been sold, that would have provided more used cars for the used car market. So, over the course of the next decade, we're going to be missing potentially 15 million used cars. So, how long does it take to overcome that? I don't know. But if you look at it, you would think, looking at that the shortage should persist. The thing in my mind that will prevent that shortage is interest rates, which will be keeping more people on the sidelines, so that there'll be less consumers for that shrinking amount of pre-owned cars. Really? You gotta be kidding me.
All right, Pops. We had this come out just yesterday. Let me see. Let me do this instead. Here we go. This article
Okay.
in Automotive News actually came out yesterday, and that it is the EV drivers struggle with declining reliability of charging network. And the reason I chose this as today's really got to be kidding me is because, you know, the push for electric vehicles, it is one that, depending on which camp you're in, you think it's a great thing, a bad thing. No matter what camp you're in, you're going to need reliable charging infrastructure.
Yes.
This chart, Dad, shows you quarter over quarter the percentage of people who showed up, and we've got members of our own team at CarEdge who fill out these damn surveys, folks.
Yeah.
The percentage of people who have shown up to charge at a public charging place and not been able to charge at all. Not that they went to a charger and it just didn't work. They weren't able to charge, Dad. And we've gone from, as there's been more adoption, it was 14.5%. We got down to 14.3%. We are above 21%. 1 in 5 trips to the gas station for your EV, you simply can't fill up. Again, regardless of what camp you're in, this is damning. The idea of this being mass market, this is the damning piece of it.
Well, absolutely, and it always has been. You know, the infrastructure portion of EVs has always been an issue. So, and yes, it's primarily for non-Tesla chargers. And yes, Tesla is the number one player in electric vehicles, but that might not always be the case going forward. And you know, every vehicle manufacturer has committed almost, what was it, $500 billion towards continued EV adoption, which is great because, you know, the government, the US government, would like to see 50% of all new vehicles sold by 2030 being electric vehicles. Well, if you can't charge them, why would you buy them? You know, if we are a country where people enjoy their freedom, they enjoy the fact that they can get in their vehicle and drive somewhere. We drove cross country. If you are trying to drive cross country in an electric vehicle, and you have to concern yourself with, well, will the chargers actually work at the charging station that shows that it's 10 miles down the road when I only have 10% of my range left? And then you get there to find out that it doesn't. That's an issue. So I don't see. I know the government is planning on investing billions of dollars into building charging stations nationwide and along, I guess, all of our interstate highways. But the question becomes, how quickly can you do it? Can the electrical grid sustain it? And if literally we're selling 8 million electric vehicles by 2030 annually, will there be enough infrastructure in place to be able to charge those vehicles if somebody's driving cross country or wherever they're driving? My suspicion is no. That's just my suspicion. You know, I hope I'm wrong, but you know, the best laid plans of mice and men or of governments is that the projections are always greater than what the reality is. The time frame is always longer than what they hoped it would be. And I think I've said it on this show. You know, in 2030, if we're even at 30 or 35% of vehicles sold being electric vehicles, I think that would be a lot. I don't see it happening as quickly as those who are proponents of electric vehicles say it will. And I think a lot of those billions of dollars are going to get siphoned off and nobody's really going to know where the money went because in many cases it won't be building anything that it was supposed to be building other than somebody's own personal wealth.
All right, we're not going to go too far down that rabbit hole, although that inevitably does happen and likely, sadly, will. Pops, I want to remind everyone back at CarEdge.com, if you go under resources and you click on free data, that'll take you to the old, kind of like the legacy CarEdge.com, where you can see rankings of vehicles based off of how much they cost to own, depreciation, insurance, maintenance, all those fun things. If you are not using this data before you buy a car, please, you're doing a disservice. For example, if I want to see the vehicles that cost the least to maintain over a 10-year period of time, or maybe I want to see the worst, I can just click on that little button. I can see that Rams are going to be quite expensive. Then I can dig into it, folks. I can really get into the data. So if you are like us, if you really enjoy the numbers, please go to CarEdge.com. Let me show you again. CarEdge.com. Under resources here, we have that free data. And if we can help you buy a car, if we can help you sell a car, if we can help you get insurance for your vehicle, those pesky warranties, if you want one, we offer one. Finance, refinance, we have all of that and more back at CarEdge.com. So please avail yourself of all of those different resources. Now, Dad, before we go, obviously we talked about Kevin Durant at the beginning. We are very excited about our Phoenix Suns making a run for the championship. What books are behind you, man? I see the bookshelf behind you. What have you been reading recently? I see. What is that? The Letterman? Is that what that says? David Letterman
that
book?
that was a book. The David Letterman. It was a biography. Yeah, there's a bunch of crap up there. Some of which I've read, some of which I haven't. I like to read about funny people. I read a good book on what's that? Kindle about Mel Brooks. Humor is a big part of my life, and people who are funny I like to read about. And not all funny people are happy people. A lot of them are. The humor is based on depression, but it's interesting. So yeah. There are books behind me, and there's bottles of wine behind me, and everything else.
Has anyone watched Last of Us on HBO, Dad? Have you? Did you start watching it?
I did not. I finished Godless last night, which I thought was really good. Okay, guys. Okay. I really enjoyed that. And I didn't start Last of Us yet, but I promise I shall. Does a new segment come out every week? Is that how it works?
I have no clue, man. I have no clue. I'm with Captain Flannel here. I think it's really good.
Okay, because I do know a lot of the HBO programs, they make you wait a week. So oftentimes I just like to wait for the season to be done, and then I can stream them at my leisure, and I don't have to wait a week between episodes. That's just me.
Hey, maybe if you've got some show suggestions, drop them in the chat. I know my dad
please
would appreciate. Anyway, we will be back tomorrow. We will have Miss Kimberly Klein with us. We will be doing Kimberly's Corner. Pops, what time will that be at?
I believe we'll be back here tomorrow at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, with more news that you can use from CarEdge. And your hosts again will be, these two knuckleheads. Us and the lovely, enchanting, and talented Miss Kimberly Klein.
Thank you, Pops, for your time. See you all tomorrow. Everyone have a good Thursday.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We look forward to having you back here tomorrow. Have a good one. Let's go.